Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the franchise guide.
The whole idea of fear is interesting because sometimes it manifests as something else. So it manifests into things like, I need to think about it. It manifests into things like, well, I need to ask my partner, my spouse, whoever's going to be involved in the business. And it almost becomes similar to an excuse. Not to say, by the way, you shouldn't involve your spouse, your partner, anyone involved in the business. I talk about that in my book. That's really important. And they should really be on any of your initial calls to really understand the process of what's going on. But I've noticed people understand I'm scared. I didn't say that. I remember working with my franchise coach and consultant back in 05, 06. It came to just buying time. You need to think a little bit, not ready for a call. Can lose all my entire investment. What about if it doesn't work out and things like that? Fear, for many people, it's negative, right? It's about, okay, I'm so fearful. What do I do? It's this really strong emotion. And then they kind of shut down and then do nothing about it. Working with various coaches and individuals, I learned that, actually, perfect example, John Allen Mollenhauer, had him on the show. We'll link that show as well. I'm going to make a quick little note or I'm going to forget. So part of what I do is I keep a Word document open and I make sure that our marketing company and editors, they can insert that as a quick reference. You don't have to remember this, especially if you're coming back or you're driving and you want to come back and just click on the link. So talked about, he specializes in healing the body naturally, light therapies and things like that. But his big thing when we worked together was energy. Just because you're sleeping for 8 hours a day, you could still feel drained. So what is depleting the energy? And the idea of fear, number one, depletes your energy, constantly thinking of worst case scenario, putting you in a negative spot. When you're in a negative spot, you're tired, right? You're looking at worst case scenarios. But I think it was Jim Carrey did a speech years ago. I forget the university, that'll come to me. But he talked about just this idea of obviously having that internal story, but also it projects our views on things. And when you're in fear, when you're lack of energy, you're really down, you're kind of looking out there and everything is kind of negative and you kind of start to miss the opportunities because you're viewing everything in a negative light. So John Allen Mollenhauer, things we work on is different mindsets, different ways of looking at things, making certain decisions. This was a big one for me. Maybe not during the week back in the day. This is actually, I was still at my W-2 when we had first started working together. So I had a 5-hour commute, worked for 8 hours, ready to start a family, just bought a home, recently got married. I was exhausted. Monday to Friday was not the time to be making any decisions or looking at anything. It was really, I did a lot of my research initially about starting my own business was on the weekends. On the weekend, I got to, instead of getting up at 5:30 or 5 a.m. To get to work, I got up at 8 or 9. So the extra hours of sleep, I was in a different state, different mindset, just was rested, much more positive and willing to look at things and not depleted. When the energy is depleted, sometimes you just have to what you're doing, step away, get some additional rest. Working more hours doesn't necessarily equate to any additional efficiencies or outcomes. A 15-minute task can drag on for 2 or 3 hours.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.